Have you ever felt the weight of heaven pressing on your heart, like something in the spirit is calling your name right now? When God gets ready to move, He doesn't whisper, He shakes the ground beneath your feet. Remember when Moses stood before the Red Sea terrified, surrounded, yet God said, "Lift up your staff." That was the moment obedience opened the impossible. You see, sometimes divine instruction comes not as a suggestion but as an order, a command from heaven itself. And if you can discern it, your entire destiny can turn in an instant. Because right now on this very day a message has been released. Archangel Michael says, "I order you to," and what I'm about to reveal to you about this could shift your perspective forever, but you must watch this video until the very end. Don't skip. When heaven starts a countdown, it doesn't use seconds and minutes like we do. It speaks through moments, through the soft tremor in your spirit that whispers, now. You can feel it sometimes. That strange urgency in your chest, like something invisible is calling you forward, asking you to move before your mind has figured out why. That's how divine timing works. It's not about running out of time, it's about entering the moment when heaven and earth are aligned, when the call of eternity intersects with the breath of now. When you sense that urgency, it's not fear that speaks, it's destiny. It's God saying, "I've given you this window, act while it's open." Because the truth is, there are windows in life that don't stay forever. Not every door will wait for you to find the courage to knock. Not every opportunity lingers until you feel ready. Sometimes readiness comes after obedience. Sometimes you don't understand the instruction until you've already stepped out in faith. Imagine Noah, standing in the middle of dry land, building a ship the size of a city. People thought he had lost his mind. The sky was blue, the ground was solid, and there wasn't a drop of rain in sight. But when heaven said, "Build," Noah didn't ask for evidence. He obeyed. His obedience looked foolish until the flood came. What looked unnecessary became essential. That's how obedience works. It rarely makes sense at the start, but it always makes miracles at the end. We live in a world addicted to delay. We say, "I'll pray about it," when God already answered. We say, "I'll wait for confirmation," when confirmation is the very breath in our lungs. But there are times when heaven stops waiting for you to decide, and instead gives you a divine countdown. Not to pressure you, but to prepare you. Because if you don't move when the Spirit moves, the moment passes, and what could have been a divine alignment becomes a missed opportunity. You see, when God gives you 20 minutes, He's not counting time, He's measuring trust. Every second is a chance to say yes, even when it makes no sense. Every tick of the clock is an invitation to align your will with His. It's not that He's rushing you, it's that He's synchronizing you with what's unfolding beyond sight. The countdown isn't punishment, it's permission. Permission to step out of hesitation and into revelation. Sometimes the delay isn't about God being late, it's about us being slow to respond. Heaven moves at the speed of obedience. The moment you say yes, things start rearranging in your favor. Doors that refuse to open start to tremble on their hinges. Because obedience is not passive, it's prophetic. It's not simply doing what you're told. It's declaring through action that you trust the unseen more than the visible. And the truth is, God's timing doesn't need your understanding, it needs your agreement. When the Spirit says, "A move," don't analyze, don't negotiate, don't delay. Move. Because the enemy's greatest weapon is not always destruction. If he can keep you thinking about the command instead of acting on it, he's already won. Every moment you hesitate is a moment heaven is waiting for your yes. Right now, some of you are standing on the edge of that moment. You've felt the pull, you've seen the sign, the numbers, the dreams, the repetition. It's all heaven's way of saying the time is now. But you've been second-guessing yourself, asking, "What if I fail?" Let me tell you something, obedience is never failed. Even if it doesn't turn out the way you imagined, it always turns into what God intended. Because obedience doesn't guarantee the outcome you expect, it guarantees the outcome you need. And here's the mystery: when heaven says 20 minutes left, it's not to create panic but to awaken presence. The Spirit wants to draw you out of yesterday's regret and tomorrow's anxiety into the holiness of now. This is where destiny breathes. This is where miracles unfold. The power isn't in waiting for the perfect moment, it's in recognizing that this is the perfect moment. So maybe the question isn't, "What if I run out of time?" Maybe the real question is, what if I waste the time I've been given? Because heaven has already begun the countdown, not to frighten you, but to free you, to push you from intention into motion, to remind you that obedience today is the foundation of blessing tomorrow. The divine clock is ticking, not to threaten but to awaken. The window is open, the Spirit is speaking, and heaven is waiting for your response. Don't reason yourself out of revelation. Don't let the noise of fear drown out the whisper of faith. When God says a now, eternity leans in to see what you'll do next. Because the truth is simple, time doesn't run out on heaven's will. It runs out on our hesitation, and there are moments in life when heaven doesn't ask, it commands, not out of arrogance, not out of force, but out of divine certainty. When an order comes from above, it isn't to limit your freedom but to awaken. It comes to remind you that you are part of something much larger than your own understanding. When Archangel Michael says, "I order you to," it's not the voice of domination. It's the voice of divine alignment, the echo of purpose calling you into position. Because the higher realms know what your heart has forgotten. There are things waiting for you that can only be unlocked through obedience. Think of it this way. A general doesn't explain every detail of a battle plan to his soldiers. He simply says, "A move." And those who trust his command step forward, not because they see the whole picture but because they trust the one giving the order. Heaven functions the same way. You are not being asked to understand every detail. You're being invited to trust the authority of the one who sees the entire field. Archangel Michael's command isn't random, it's strategic. Every order carries a ripple effect that shifts the unseen realms into motion. The problem is, most people hesitate when heaven speaks. We want confirmation, we want comfort, we want to negotiate the cost before we take the step. But spiritual warfare doesn't wait for your convenience. And there's a vast difference between knowing what God said and acting on what God said. The first changes your awareness, the second changes your reality. When heaven issues a command, it's because timing is sacred. There's a moment when everything in the spirit aligns, angels, atmosphere, opportunity. And if you move within that alignment, doors open effortlessly. But if you resist, delay or doubt, the moment shifts. It's not punishment, it's physics. Energy responds to faith, and faith responds to obedience. You become a conductor of divine power the moment you agree to follow without needing to control. Archangel Michael's order carries that kind of weight. He is not merely delivering a message, he is enforcing the will of God in your life. When he says, "I order you to stand, to move, to release, to forgive, to let go," it's because something in the heavenly blueprint depends on your movement. Your obedience triggers a chain reaction, blessings, breakthroughs, revelations, that can only begin when you say yes. And maybe that's what this moment is really about. Maybe the instruction you've been resisting is the very key that unlocks your next chapter. You've been asking for signs, for miracles, for clarity, and heaven has been waiting for your surrender. Because miracles are not born out of asking, they are born out of aligning. Heaven's power doesn't flow through stubbornness, it flows through surrender. You can feel it, can't you? That tug inside your spirit. The quiet insistence that you were made for something more, and yet you've been standing still. The order is coming not to control you but to awaken, to call you back to your post, to remind you that your voice, your presence, your obedience matter in the great design. You are not a spectator in this story. You are a participant in divine strategy. Remember Abraham? He didn't know where he was going, only that heaven had said a go. And that single act of obedience turned him from a wanderer into a father of nations. Or think of Peter, who cast his net one more time even after a night of failure, simply because the voice said, "Launch into the deep." That moment of trust transformed emptiness into overflow. The order came, and the blessing followed. That's the pattern. Heaven speaks, you respond, creation shifts. You see, the authority of a divine command isn't meant to make you small, it's meant to make you strong. It's the call of alignment, the sound of the infinite harmonizing with the finite. When Michael speaks, he carries the frequency of divine order, a reminder that chaos has an expiration date, and that even your confusion must bow to higher instruction. But here's the mystery, you have to listen with more than your ear. Heaven's orders aren't always shouted. Sometimes they whisper through circumstances, through intuition, through stillness. They often come when you're quiet enough to hear what's been waiting to be said all along. And when you finally recognize that command, something inside you stirs. Not fear, not resistance, but remembrance. You remember who you are and whose voice has always guided you. So when the order comes, don't shrink back. Don't wait for the perfect moment or the perfect understanding. The act of moving is the understanding. The step itself is the revelation. Because when you obey, you discover that the command was never about control. It was about awakening your divine rhythm with the universe. And perhaps that's the essence of this message, that heaven is not shouting orders at you from above, but calling you to dance in step with its rhythm. To move when it moves, to speak when it speaks, to trust when you cannot see. The command is not the end of freedom, it's the beginning of flow. So when the voice says, I order you to, don't resist it, don't run from it, let it pull you into divine motion. Because some orders are not about submission, they are about liberation. And this is heaven calling you back into alignment. There's a strange kind of quiet that falls before a battle. A stillness that doesn't feel peaceful but charged, as if the air itself is listening. You've felt it before, haven't you? That sense that something unseen is pressing against your life, not in the physical world but in the atmosphere around you. It's not a coincidence, not bad luck, not random resistance, it's warfare, but not the kind that spills blood or leaves scars on the. It's the war behind the curtain, the one that rages in the invisible, where your spirit becomes the battlefield and your obedience, your faith, your peace become the weapon. You see, we often make the mistake of fighting shadows. We wrestle with people, with circumstances, with things we can touch, blaming others for the weight we feel. But the real struggle isn't with flesh and blood. The real tension sits behind the veil, in realms where energy moves faster than words and where every thought, every fear, every doubt either strengthens you or feeds your enemy. Archangel Michael doesn't step into casual skirmishes. His presence means the war has already escalated. When he appears, heaven is responding to a spiritual disturbance, not to destroy you but to deliver you. There's a truth few are willing to accept. Whenever something divine is about to be born in you, resistance intensifies. The moment destiny draws near, warfare follows. Think of Daniel, who fasted and prayed for an answer that never came, until Michael broke through the resistance in the heavens. The messenger angel had been delayed 21 days, not because God hadn't heard, but because opposition had risen to block the message. And so Michael, the warrior, stepped in. That's how serious heaven is about you receiving what's yours. It fights for your revelation. Now pause and think about that. The same intensity that Michael brought to Daniel's prayer is the same energy that surrounds you now. Every time you feel like giving up, every time confusion clouds your purpose, every time despair whispers that you've been forgotten, remember that the conflict isn't proof of absence, it's proof of importance. The darkness only fights what threatens it. The reason it's been hard is because you are close to something sacred. We tend to pray for peace, but sometimes what we really need is power. Peace comes after victory, not before it. And the power you need doesn't come from running away from the battle but from realizing you are not fighting alone. The unseen war requires unseen strength. Faith that refuses to collapse under pressure. That's what draws heaven into motion. When you choose to trust instead of panic, when you stand firm instead of retreat, you create a vibration in the spiritual world that attracts reinforcement. And perhaps that's why Archangel Michael's command feels so urgent in this moment. It's not just a call to obedience, it's a call to arms. Not with weapons of destruction but with clarity, courage, and surrender. The mind that tries to understand everything will tire itself out. The heart that trusts will find itself carried. The only way to win this battle is to realize that victory has never depended on your strength, only your alignment. Every delay, every rejection, every unseen obstacle, they aren't punishments, they're spiritual blockades being challenged. Heaven is rearranging pathways, clearing interference, silencing lies. Sometimes what feels like waiting is really warfare. Sometimes silence is the sound of angels fighting for your outcome. You may not see it, but you are surrounded. Every step forward you take sends a tremor through the darkness. Every act of faith draws the line deeper between what's divine and what's deceptive. But here's the mystery: the war isn't just around you, it's within you. The battlefield stretches through your thoughts, your emotions, your will. The war isn't simply between good and evil, it's between belief and fear. The enemy doesn't need to destroy you, only to convince you to stop moving. If he can trap you in doubt, he's already claimed victory. That's why Archangel Michael's voice breaks through with authority, a stand, because standing in itself is defiance against darkness. Every time you stand, heaven stands with you. You must understand that the universe doesn't waste battles on the unimportant. If the war feels personal, it's because your purpose is significant. The tension, the fatigue, the weariness, they're not random symptoms. They're indicators that something ancient, something sacred is being fought for on your behalf. The same forces that moved mountains for prophets and kings are now aligned in your story, not to destroy you but to awaken you. So breathe. You are not losing, you are being fortified. The pressure you feel is the weight of your wings growing, and though you may not see it yet, the victory is already forming in the invisible. The war is not to break you, it's to prepare you for what comes next. And perhaps that's the true revelation here, that what you thought was chaos has been choreography, that the battle wasn't meant to kill you but to crown you. Because in the end, every spiritual war has one purpose: to reveal that you were never fighting for survival. You were fighting for awakening. There's something profoundly mysterious about obedience. It's such a simple word, yet it carries the weight of transformation. Most people hear it and think of submission, of giving up control, of losing freedom. But in truth, obedience is the highest form of alignment. It's the art of tuning your spirit to the rhythm of divine intelligence, that unseen current that knows where you need to be long before you do. When heaven gives a command, it's not trying to dominate you, it's trying to deliver you. The most powerful movements of your life don't begin when you understand. They begin when you obey. Understanding comes later, when you look back and realize that every step of faith was a step toward a design you couldn't yet see. That's the beauty of it. Faith doesn't wait for proof, it creates it. When you move in obedience, the universe rearranges itself to meet you in motion. Think of that widow in Zarephath, broken, empty at the end of her hope. A prophet came to her door and said, "Bake me a cake first." It must have sounded insane. She had barely enough flour for one meal, and yet she gave what she had. Her act of obedience looked small, almost foolish, but it shifted her reality. What was supposed to be her last meal became the beginning of abundance. Because obedience always contains a hidden multiplier. You give what you can't afford to lose, and heaven gives back what you could never have gained. That's how divine principles work. Obedience is the currency of miracles. It's the moment when human limitation meets divine intention. When you say yes, even trembling, you invite heaven to show what it can do through your surrender. But it's rarely easy. Obedience demands the death of control. And control is something we humans cling to like a shield. We want guarantees, details, timelines, yet heaven works outside of all that. The command doesn't come to comfort your logic, it comes to awaken your trust. So when the Spirit says, "A go," even when everything in you says, "A stay," it's because your next miracle is not where you are, it's where you're being sent, and you'll never find it by standing still. Most people wait for the right conditions before they act. But obedience flips that idea upside down. It says act first, and the conditions will change. It's not waiting for signs, it becomes the sign. There's a rhythm to divine timing, and obedience is how you catch the beat. If you hesitate, the rhythm moves on without you. Not out of punishment but out of flow. When God speaks, the whole universe shifts to make that word manifest. Creation itself leans toward fulfillment. And your obedience is what allows you to step into that current. The moment you say yes, you're no longer moving alone. You're being carried by something greater. But here's the strange thing. Obedience often feels like loss at first. Abraham leaving his homeland, Peter stepping out of the boat, Mary saying yes to something she couldn't possibly explain. Every act of obedience looks like surrender on the outside, but it's resurrection on the inside. It's the moment your will melts into divine will and something higher begins to live through you. The truth is, obedience doesn't always look spiritual. Sometimes it looks like letting go of a relationship. Sometimes it's walking away from an opportunity that doesn't feel right. Sometimes it's being still when everything in you wants to move. It's about trusting that the same voice that called you knows where it's leading you. Every divine command has a purpose, even when the path looks dark. Light only makes sense when you step into it. And if you listen closely, you'll realize that obedience isn't about performance, it's about participation. Heaven doesn't need you to prove your worth, it's inviting you to align with its work. When you say yes, you become part of something infinite, something timeless. That's why obedience feels alive, because it connects your breath to eternity's heartbeat. But the danger lies in hesitation. The longer you wait to obey, the louder fear becomes. Doubt multiplies in silence. You start to rationalize what was meant to be received in faith. And before long, what was a divine opportunity turns into regret. The window closes, not because heaven stopped speaking, but because you stopped responding. That's why obedience carries urgency, not panic. Because timing is sacred, and the blessing tied to obedience exists within a specific moment. You'll never feel ready, you'll never have all the answers, but readiness is not the requirement, willingness is. The moment you act, heaven confirms. The act of obedience itself becomes the key that unlocks everything that's been waiting for you. So when you feel that nudge, that inner voice saying, do it now, speak now, move now, don't hesitate, that's not anxiety, that's alignment. Heaven is inviting you into the next chapter of your becoming. Because every time you obey, you're not losing freedom, you're finding it. You're not surrendering control, you're surrendering limitation. You're not just following an order, you're stepping into divine orchestration. And in that sacred motion of trust, you'll find what every soul longs for, the peace that comes when your will and heaven's will finally move as one. Because in the end, obedience isn't about what you give up, it's about what you're finally ready to receive. There comes a point when time itself feels heavy, when every breath carries the echo of something imminent. You can sense it before you see it, that subtle trembling in the atmosphere that says, something is about to change. That's what happens when heaven's clock strikes its final moment. Not the end of time, but the end of hesitation. The Spirit whispers, this is it, this is your moment, and suddenly everything ordinary becomes sacred. You realize that you're standing not just in another day, but in a divine intersection, where what was promised and what has been delayed finally meet. These moments don't come often. They carry a holy pressure, a stirring that refuses to let you rest. Heaven is calling for a response. Not tomorrow, not someday, but now. The prophetic always arrives dressed as urgency. When the message says there are only 20 minutes left, it's not about counting minutes on a clock, it's about counting the heartbeats of destiny. It's a way of saying, alignment is here, and if you move within it, everything will change. You can almost feel the angels leaning in. The air around you starts to shimmer with unseen movement. What you thought was delay was really preparation. What you called silence was strategy. Heaven doesn't forget, it waits for the appointed moment when the soil of your life is finally ready to receive the seed. And now that moment has arrived. The final call always carries both beauty and weight. There's beauty in knowing that something divine is unfolding, and weight in realizing that you have a part to play. The call doesn't come to spectators, it comes to participants. It's heaven's way of saying, you've seen enough, you've prayed enough, now it's time to move. And when you feel that pull, that strange mix of fear and faith, don't mistake it for anxiety. It's the vibration of destiny aligning with your soul. We spend so much of our lives waiting for signs, but there comes a moment when you must recognize that you are the sign. Every experience, every delay, every heartbreak has been forming you for this very hour. The prophetic call isn't just an invitation, it's an activation. Heaven doesn't just speak to inform you, it speaks to awaken you. When it says, I order you to rise, to act, to move, it's because the world around you is shifting to make space for your obedience. And maybe that's what the countdown truly means. Not an ending but a divine synchronization. Heaven and earth moving in rhythm, aligning your purpose with timing. This isn't a random day, it's an appointed one. The spiritual realm is thick with intention. Doors that were locked begin to tremble. People who left suddenly return, opportunities long forgotten reappear. All of it converges in a single fragile moment, one that demands your awareness. You see, the prophetic doesn't arrive quietly, it shakes you awake. It makes you question everything you've settled for. It refuses to let you remain comfortable in delay, because destiny is not polite, it disrupts. And when it does, it often looks like chaos before it reveals its order. So if things around you seem uncertain, if life feels unstable, don't panic. That's not destruction, it's rearrangement. The old has to fall apart so the new can take shape. This is what it means to live inside divine timing. You start to realize that what you thought was running out of time was actually running into purpose. Heaven has been preparing the stage, and now the curtain is lifting. But the script won't read itself, it requires your voice. The prophecy won't fulfill itself, it requires your participation. Heaven can issue the order, but you must respond to it. That's what this message has been building toward all along. The understanding that obedience and timing must finally meet. You can no longer afford to wait for certainty. Certainty is the last thing that arrives in faith. The command has been given, the countdown has begun, and the next move belongs to you. You might not realize it, but this, right now, is a prophetic moment. You're standing in the tension between what was and what will be. Everything that led you here wasn't random, it was rehearsal for revelation. The waiting, the struggle, the silence, they were all preparation for this call. So when the voice says, "A move now, don't look back," when it says, "A forgive," do it without question. When it says, "A let go," don't hold on to what's dying, because divine moments do not wait forever. Once the door closes, it may not open again in the same way. And if heaven is speaking now, it's because now is sacred. You can't stop the clock, but you can choose how to use what's left of it. The next 20 minutes, metaphorical or real, hold a power that can change everything. But only if you listen, only if you respond. And maybe that's the point. Maybe the countdown isn't meant to scare you but to wake you, to remind you that eternity is not coming, it's already here, and heaven is waiting for your yes, because this is not the end, it's the turning point. And what you do next will echo through eternity.